Hey, welcome back. So now we're going to dive into watercolor. Again, we're diving into the middle of the pool, not necessarily the deep end, but we're not in the wading part either. So hopefully you've got all your supplies and we're going to start. So I'm going to start this and just in a quick review, today we're going to talk about and do wet on wet and wet on dry. The sky area was created with wet on wet, which gives these edges the fuzz and the kind of the blurriness, the blendedness of clouds. And then the wet on dry, which gives us the sharp, crisp lines. So here we go. Get your paper, and I want you with your paintbrush. Well, first off, I had to get my blue wet. I forgot to do that. So I'm getting this paper wet. And you can tell if you've missed a spot, if you kind of crouch down so the light is shining on the paper, if there's some dull spots, you know that they didn't get water. And you want to put enough on that it remains wet for a little bit. All right. One thing I want to explain to you about what I'm doing here, I do not have a preset idea of how these clouds are going to look. I'm kind of noodling, just kind of doing stuff. One thing I am keeping in mind though is clouds tend to be more billowy on the top and often they're kind of flattish on the bottom. So I'm trying to create that also. I'm trying also to think, okay, I have a lot of white here, so maybe I'll put some blue sky over here. And maybe I want to darken some of the blue. You'll notice there's a certain area that I put a little bit more pigment in because I want to get that blue. Watercolor will fade, so it will lighten up as it dries. So don't be afraid to throw some dark colors in there. And sometimes, like you notice, you just have to dot it and then it spreads where you want it. My paper was curling, so I had to kind of hold it down a little bit. You notice at the very top where that torn edge is, there's a kind of a pointy thing of paint. I don't want that there because that's not the effect I'm after. And so I use my paintbrush as a sponge. I get all the moisture out of my paintbrush, and then I just go along and it just sucks up that extra paint. It's kind of like using an eraser. Okay, now we're going to let this dry because the next part is not wet on wet, it's wet on dry. Okay, now the paper's dry, it's flattened out a bit. And now I'm going to get a lot of pigment, which means more of the watercolor block and less water. That darkens the color. And I wanted to do like an ocean or a body of water. You notice that I'm painting with the side of my paintbrush. So I'm going to show you. I'm painting with the side of it. Boop. Trying to figure out where to focus. So the side versus the tip. Because with the bumpy paper, that skips little areas and leaves them white, which then can look like a reflection on the water. So once I've done that, now I want to paint a silhouette of a boat. And boats, especially the kind that I paint here, you'll see, are just a series of triangles. Don't stress over it. So doing a little triangle here at the top of the water. And one thing you'll notice is that I wanted to make it even darker. So I made sure there was less water and more of the paint or more of the pigment. And the water, the body of water that I had painted hadn't dried yet. So you see that the boat is losing its form underneath and is actually kind of blending in to the water. And at first, that was not what I was going for. And at first, I was disappointed that that was happening. But then it occurred to me that might be a really cool effect. So I just thought, we'll just let it go, which is part of the magic of watercolor. So now I'm painting the sail. Again, another triangle. If you can draw a triangle, you can draw a sail. And we are almost done. We're going to do another little sail on the side, a little smaller. And then when I'm done with that, I'm just going to throw a reflection in the water, kind of drag some of that wet paint down into the water part. And now it's done. It's completely finished. And we just use one color. And this allows us to practice both techniques. So I want you to try that now. And then next week, we'll move on to the next step.